So I'm really pleased to be here today, and thanks so much for all coming out to hear about green careers. It's really I think it's one of the most important and challenging careers that you can have. If you think about how the world is changing, right now we're at a tipping point, a threshold of our environment. Over the next 50 years, scientists have thought about how the climate is changing. And what scientists tell us is that the climate globally that we're going to have when you are adults and when you're getting older over the next 50 years is going to be very different from the environment that your parents grew up in. And what that's going to mean is that we're going to suffer higher and higher temperatures. We're already seeing the ice caps at the top of the Earth are melting. We're seeing loss of biodiversity. More and more, we're going to be experiencing flooding and droughts and extreme weather patterns as a result of the climate crisis. As well, globally, we're suffering a number of environmental crises relating to loss of biodiversity, relating to loss of our rainforests, for example. And here in Manitoba, we're seeing some of the effects of that with increasing flooding activity, as well as changes in our water patterns across the province. So, for me, I think that the environment has always been something that I've personally become really attached to. I didn't grow up here in Manitoba. I moved here about 5 years ago. I grew up in BC. And when I was growing up, at the time, there was a lot of clear-cut logging. And I don't know if any of you have ever been to British Columbia, but the forests there are really amazing. You know, you've got trees that are as wide as one of these tables. And just going out into the forest and seeing some of the areas where logging was taking place. And one day there'd be just an unbelievable forest with, you know, trees as far as the eyes could see, and to see it being taken down, and the clear cuts that were replacing it, that were destroying the waterways and destroying the fish habitat. That's kind of what touched me first off. As well, at the time when I was about your age, there's an environmentalist, David Suzuki, maybe people have seen his show, Nature of Things, on TV. He said that we had about 10 years to turn things around before we'd start to see some of the dangerous consequences of the road that we're taking in terms of our environmental impact. And that was more than 10 years ago. And so now we're already starting to see some of those environmental impacts, as I was talking about earlier. And that to me is an expression that we really need to change direction as we're going in society. And that's, for example, when one of the things that we know about the level of consumption that we have here in Manitoba, if everybody on the earth were to consume at the level that we're consuming here in Manitoba, we would need about 3 planets to provide all the resources for all the things that we consume, all the oil that we put into our cars, all the fibers, all the paper that we use, and everything that we throw out. And so that's one of the things that really got me involved with environmentalism. And so I'm working at an organization right now called Green Action Centre. And Green Action Centre, we're one of Manitoba's largest environmental organizations. So what we do is we try to provide practical solutions for environmental problems, practical solutions that you can use in your home, in your workplace, in communities. And we work on areas like climate change. We work on active transportation. Maybe some of you have seen seen some of the workshops that we've done in your schools to try to get more bike parking at schools, for example. You know, when I was growing up and in earlier generations, most kids walked to school or else took their bikes to school. Does anybody here walk to school? Yeah? Does anybody here get driven to school or drive themselves to school? Yeah, so that's becoming a lot more common now. And as a result of that, if you look around schools, there's tons of traffic in and out. It's becoming a much more dangerous place than it was 20 years ago around schools. As well, there's a lot of idling and a lot of excess energy that's being consumed, and kids aren't getting as much exercise. So that's one of the areas that we're trying to work on. We also do a lot of work with composting, trying to get schools and households to do more composting, as well as get the city of Winnipeg to have a composting plan and a waste reduction plan for the whole city. So those are kind of some of the areas that we work on as an organization. And what my job at Green Action Centre, I work on areas of communication. And so it's a really interesting job because it combines a lot of different areas of skill and interest for me. There's, for example, I get to talk to the media about why the environment's important. I get to work with individuals, with community groups. I get to talk to schools, and it's really interesting because it's a very generalist type of occupation because, like I said, Green Action Centre, the organization I work at, does a lot of different environmental activities. And so as communications coordinator, I get to follow each one of those and get to learn a little bit about all those different areas. Now, one of the things I was asked to do to talk about today was to talk about why, what kinds of skills you might want to get involved in if you're wanting to get involved in a career in the environment. And I'd say that it's really broad. Generally speaking, you can start off at just about any path. Most environmental organizations do like to have people with post-secondary education, but that's not always the case. And if you are going to go to post-secondary education, there's a lot of different paths you can take. When I was speaking yesterday, somebody asked me, is it better to go into science or is it better to go into social sciences or arts or something like that, or environmental studies if you want to get involved in the environment? And I think that for me, I studied sociology and anthropology. A lot of my colleagues studied biology or environmental science. And the thing that's interesting is that you can come at it through all sorts of different directions. Because one of the things we know about the environment is that everything in the environment is interconnected. So the way we organize our economies, you can have environmental economists, you can have environmental policymakers, environmental construction workers. So every type of field can be environmental. And I think that's one of the things that I really want to get across to people, because if we're going to transform the way we live as a society here in Manitoba and across Canada and around the world to be more sustainable, we need everybody to make the environment part of their job. I don't think that environment can be a specialized career that's separated from everything else. I mean, there are some people who spend more of their time working on environmental issues, but I think everybody in your job, whatever job you take, needs to include an environmental component to it, whether that's for example, making your workplace more sustainable, getting a compost bin, or making sure you have recycling at your workplace, or whether it's thinking about what kinds of environmental messages you're spreading with your work. So for example, a lot of teachers now are really trying to include sustainable development as part of their curriculum. Has anybody here ever taken a class where environmental issues are part of the curriculum? Yeah? Yeah, so it's becoming a little bit more common now, and that's an area we need to focus on a lot more. And ask your teachers to make sure that you do get to talk about things like global warming and talk about deforestation and other environmental problems, because those are important issues that we're facing and that we need to all be educated on. We also need to remember that there's a lot of different types of environmental careers out there. So my career has been more in the advocacy area. So I've been working on, over the years, I've worked on a number of different areas, including food and agriculture issues, climate change issues, waste reduction issues, and tried to advocate and do public education about what could be some better alternatives that we take. But there's a lot of jobs that are much more hands-on. So if you look at the provincial government has a brochure about what kinds of environmental careers are out there. It really ranges from everything like working with Manitoba Hydro and making sure that when they build a dam in northern Manitoba, that it's environmentally sustainable and meets the top codes of making sure it doesn't flood too much land, that it works with the First Nations people to make sure that that it doesn't destroy their habitat and the resources that they're using. It also, environmental jobs can be if you're doing purchasing for a municipality or for a company. Every company needs to buy things all the time, right? And you want somebody online that on board there that knows what are the most sustainable ways of doing purchasing, making sure that you're using as much recycled material as possible, that you're using sustainably produced materials. Green jobs can also be in the policy making area. There's a lot of people working in government right now that are really trying to develop green policies in every different department and trying to push through those ideas. And green jobs can also be practical jobs, working on the ground. There's a great organization here in Winnipeg called Build, and one of the things they do is they work with teens that had trouble with gangs and crime problems, and they get those kids actually working doing renovations in houses. And you might think, okay, renovations isn't necessarily a green job. But if you think about it, there's hundreds of thousands of homes that were built 50 years ago before we knew about all the environmental problems that we're facing and before we realized that we need to build homes as energy efficient as possible. And so it's really important to go back into all those houses and retrofit them, put the proper windows in, put proper insulation in, put new furnaces in. And so the work that those people are doing is also an environmental job. The other question I was asked was to talk a little bit about my daily work and what's good and bad about working in my job. And I'd say it's a really great job because it's super flexible, and I get to do different things pretty much every day. One day I might be doing research on the computer, and I really like doing research and writing and stuff like that. The next day I might be talking to a group of farmers about how they can improve their environmental practices. And then I might get to meet with politicians and meet with the minister and talk to him about talk to the conservation minister about what better environmental policies they could pursue around pesticides, for example. So I get to do a lot of different things in my work, and I think once you guys get into the workplace, that's something that you'll probably want to ask yourselves: is this something that is this a job that I get to do a variety of different things? You know, any one task can sound great and lots of fun, but if you're doing the same task over and over again, it gets tiresome after a few years of that. So if you have a lot of variety in your job, that's really good. The other thing I really appreciate in my job is the amount of independence I have. I get to develop my strategic planning and try to figure out what's the best way of getting sustainable environmental policies enacted here in Manitoba. And for me, that's a really exciting thing, because I'm a fairly independent person. And, you know, some people find it difficult when without a lot of direction and instruction, and some people enjoy having more freedom and getting to develop their own plans for how they do their work. Sometimes it gets to be a bit extreme. One of the first times I really noticed this was I got a job several years ago working at an international environmental organization called Greenpeace. And I was hired as an agriculture campaigner. And it was pretty interesting, and I was really excited about it. The main campaign was around genetically engineered food. Do people know what genetically engineered food is? It's where scientists can take DNA from one organism and splice it and put it into another organism. So they take genes from different species and mix them together. And a lot of environmentalists have concern about the impacts that this can have, both for the safety of the food, but also the impacts it can have on the environment. And so my job, I was pretty much the only person in English-speaking Canada that was working on this issue. And I was hired, and my supervisor was based in Montreal, and he told me, okay, well, just go in and they'll get you set up. And so basically, I went into my office the first day, and they said, okay, well, there's your phone and there's your computer, and now go ahead and try to stop genetically engineered food. And that was about all the instruction I was given. And then it so happened that my boss's boss was in town that week. And so he met with me for dinner that evening. And he's like, so do you have a plan yet? And I really didn't have a plan. You know, he was, I just sort of winged it and tried to think of ideas. And, you know, it was a while before I got up and running in developing my strategy. But it can be unnerving sometimes when you're just sort of asked to create your own campaign plan from scratch. And so that's one of the challenges of it, but it's also something that's really exciting, I think, about working in environment. And then the other thing that I think is probably most important and that gives me the most satisfaction is that I feel every day, whether I'm talking to a group of people, young people like you, or I'm doing research and writing a policy paper, every day I feel like I've achieved something, even if I just reach one person and see that they're thinking about how they can reduce their environmental impact and how they can live more sustainably on the earth. if I can just reach one person each day, then I feel like I've achieved something that's really substantial and that's really important for me. And so whatever career you choose going forward, I really hope that you're able to get that satisfaction that I get out of the work that I do.